May 18, 2017, 10:25 p.m., Glasgow. Rain lashes the windscreen as a silver Skoda Octavia cuts through the empty streets. Stephen Bonzo Daniel grips the wheel, eyes flicking between mirrors, the hum of the engine his only companion. It's been a quiet night, too quiet. The city feels half asleep, streetlights casting pale streaks over wet asphalt. Then, in the rearview mirror, a flash, headlights, one set, then another. Closing fast. The Audi comes up first, tight on his bumper. The Golf swings wide. Within seconds, the calm breaks. Tires screech, engines roar, metal groans. Stephen floors it, tearing through the back roads of Possil, his family's old stronghold. But this isn't a chase. It's a hunt. The cars box him in, ramming, forcing him off balance. His heart pounds. He knows this isn't random. Someone wants him gone. Before he can move, shadows pour out of the other cars, faces masked, blades in hand. The doors rip open and chaos floods in. A machete, a hammer, a cleaver, metal meeting flesh in a frenzy of violence. No words, no mercy, just the sound of rain and steel. When police find him, they think he's been shot. The wounds are that bad. His face shredded, his tongue nearly gone. But somehow, he's still alive. Who is Stephen Bonzo Daniel? And how did one man's name become a war cry in Glasgow's underworld? If you want real, fact-based true crime from Britain's dark heart, subscribe. Because this is just the beginning. To understand the attack that almost ended Stephen Daniel's life, you have to understand the dynasty he came from. The Daniel family name has echoed through Glasgow's underworld for decades. Their roots run deep. North Glasgow, Milton, Possil Park, Springburn, working-class neighborhoods where power isn't about who you are, but who you can control. At the head of it all was Jamie Daniel, the patriarch, a man once described by police as untouchable, smart, calculated, known for keeping order on his side of the city and collecting debts in ways that made sure they were never forgotten. Under Jamie's watch, the Daniels built something that looked less like a gang and more like an empire. Loan sharking, cocaine distribution, street-level enforcement. Everyone had a role. Everyone answered upward. And for years, that control kept North Glasgow in check. Stephen grew up in that shadow, Jamie's nephew, raised inside the family code. Loyalty was everything. Fear kept order. He learned early that silence wasn't weakness, it was armor. But across the city, another name carried weight, the Lyons family. If the Daniels were north, the Lyons ruled the south. Both families ran similar trades. Both wanted dominance. What started as business became something else, a cold war between two criminal bloodlines. For years, they coexisted, barely. Every glance, every debt, and every rumor of betrayal was like a match hovering over gasoline, and all it would take was one spark. Jamie Daniel kept that fragile peace while he lived. But power doesn't last forever. And in the criminal world, even kings can die. But every empire crumbles when its king dies. Every war starts with something small, a betrayal, a mistake, a single reckless act. For Glasgow's two most feared families, it began in 2001 with a theft. Somewhere in Milton, in the north of the city, a Daniel safe house was raided. Inside, £20,000 worth of cocaine, gone. The story on the street was that the thieves were connected to the Lyons crew, a rival network running their own operations across the Clyde. To most people, it was just another drug rip-off. But to the Daniels, it was personal. And in Glasgow's underworld, personal means war. What followed wasn't one act of revenge. It was years of quiet plotting, whispered names, and sudden violence. Drive-bys, beatings, street executions in broad daylight. By 2006, that tension boiled over when Michael Lyons, nephew of the Lyons clan's founder, was gunned down in a targeted hit. Two Daniel men, Raymond Anderson and James MacDonald, were convicted and handed 35-year sentences. The Daniels saw it as justice. The Lyons saw it as blood that needed answering. And they answered. 4 years later, in January 2010, another high-profile killing shook the city. Kevin Gerbil Carroll, a ruthless Daniel enforcer, was ambushed outside an Asda in Rob Royston. He was shot dead as shoppers ran for cover. The hit was so precise, so public, it sent a message that no one in Glasgow's underworld could ignore. The Lyons were fighting back, and they were just getting started. From that moment on, police knew this wasn't just a street feud, it was organized, professional. They started mapping phone networks, tracking encrypted devices, and identifying safe houses that operated like mini command centers. What they found was shocking. Layers of surveillance, coded messages, and hit teams recruited from England and beyond. This was a cold, tactical war between two criminal empires, fought in silence, then unleashed in bursts of chaos. By 2016, the old lion was fading. Jamie Daniel, the patriarch of Glasgow's most infamous family, was dying of cancer. For decades, his name had kept order. Rivalries were controlled, tempers contained. Even the Lyons knew, while Jamie lived, certain lines couldn't be crossed. But in July 2016, that control vanished. Jamie Daniel died, and with him, the fragile balance that kept Glasgow's criminal world from imploding. At his funeral, hundreds turned out, friends, rivals, curious faces watching from a distance. To the outside world, it looked like respect. To those inside, it was opportunity. Because when the king falls, every kingdom starts to fracture. Almost immediately, intelligence officers began to pick up chatter, movements, coded calls, new cars registered to fake names. Lyons-linked cells were on the move. The surveillance later showed that reconnaissance had begun almost as soon as Jamie was buried. The message was clear. Without its leader, the Daniel empire was vulnerable. And at the center of it all, Stephen Bonzo Daniel, Jamie's nephew, the man expected to take the throne, whether he wanted it or not. He inherited not just the family's reputation, but its enemies. Enemies who'd been waiting 15 years for a moment exactly like this. And with the old guard gone, the knives came out. In December 2016, the first blow landed. Robert Daniel, Stephen's cousin, was rammed off the road by masked men. Before he could escape, they surrounded his car. Hammers, hatchets, blades flashing in the streetlights. He barely survived, left bleeding in the cold. That attack set the tone. Just weeks later, in January 2017, Thomas Bilsland, another known Daniel associate, was ambushed outside a gym. His skull was fractured so badly that doctors said he was inches from death. Then came March. Gary Petty, caught off guard in a supermarket car park. Different location, same method, same message. And in April, Ryan Fitzsimmons, targeted with hammers and a sword. He lived but suffered permanent brain damage. Each man was connected. Each attack traced back to one name, Daniel. Detectives started calling it a pattern, but on the streets, everyone knew what it really was. Practice. Every ambush felt like a rehearsal for something bigger. The way the cars moved, the timing, the surgical ferocity of the strikes. Someone somewhere was working up to a final kill, and at the center of that growing storm was one man who still believed he could outrun the past. Stephen Bonzo Daniel. 18 May 2017, a Thursday night in Glasgow. The city glowing under the floodlights of Ibrox Stadium. Stephen Bonzo Daniel was there, just another face in the crowd watching Rangers versus Aberdeen. To most people it was football. To him, it was a moment to breathe, to believe for once that the worst might be behind him. But as he left the stadium walking toward his silver Skoda Octavia, unseen eyes were already on him. Two cars, a black Audi S3 and a dark VW Golf, both stolen, both fitted with fake plates. They slid into traffic a few cars behind, headlights dimmed, engines purring low. Stephen headed north, past Possil, the streets slick with rain. His phone pinged occasionally, messages from friends. Nothing unusual, but beneath the chassis of his Skoda, hidden near the rear wheel arch, was a GPS tracker. The attackers knew every turn before he made it. As he hit the M8 off-ramp near Craighall Road, everything erupted. The Audi lunged forward, bam, slamming into his rear bumper at nearly 100 miles an hour. Stephen tried to steer out, but the Golf appeared from the right, cutting him off. Metal screamed, tires smoked, the Skoda spun, crashed into the barrier, and stopped dead. What happened next lasted less than 60 seconds. Doors flew open. 4 men in dark clothing surrounded the wreck. No words, no hesitation, just machetes, hammers and cleavers crashing through glass and metal. Stephen tried to shield himself, but the blows came fast. To his face, his skull, his hands, blood soaked the seat. He slumped sideways as the attackers vanished into the night. By the time police arrived, they thought he'd been shot. His injuries were that severe. When he finally woke up, he barely recognized himself in the mirror. But in the world Stephen came from, there were no statements to give, no names to point. Because in that world, silence was survival, even if it cost him everything. This level of detail comes straight from verified court records and open police sources. If you value real investigation over sensationalism, subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories from Britain's underworld. The night of the ambush wasn't the end of the war. It was proof of how far it had already gone, and how much further it was still willing to go. Within hours, detectives launched Operation Engagement, a multi-force effort spanning Glasgow, Manchester, and beyond. Every CCTV feed within miles of the crash site was pulled. Every mobile phone ping near Craighall Road that night was logged. The trail was faint, but it was there. One clue broke everything open. A GPS tracker sourced from Manchester, traced through encrypted phone data and warehouse surveillance. It led investigators straight to a network of hired enforcers and contract criminals. Some local, some brought up from England. By October 2017, 6 men were detained in coordinated raids across Glasgow. 3 months later, in January 2018, more arrests followed, including one in Kent, hundreds of miles from the crime scene. When the forensics came back, it all fit together. Burned-out cars, DNA, mobile routes. The same crew had been behind 5 previous Daniel-linked attacks, and the brutal May 2017 hit. Prosecutors called it a military-level conspiracy. Encrypted communications, reconnaissance runs, disposable cars, each strike designed to look spontaneous, but planned like an operation. In a rare moment of public candor, a Police Scotland commander summed it up best. They planned to turn Glasgow into a war zone. In January 2019, 2 years after the blood on Craighall Road, the case finally reached the High Court in Glasgow. It would last 14 weeks, a sprawling, high-security trial that laid bare the anatomy of a modern gang war. The defendants, Brian Ferguson, Andrew Gallagher, Robert Pickett, John Hardy, Andrew Sinclair, and Peter Bain, all men tied by loyalty, money, and blood, all accused of conspiracy to murder Stephen Bonzo Daniel and his associates. The prosecution painted a picture of a network that operated with military precision, gathering intelligence on targets, using encrypted devices, and deploying decoy vehicles to confuse police response. Forensics placed them at multiple scenes, including the May 2017 ambush. In April 2019, the verdicts came in. All 6 were found guilty. Sentences ranged from 13 to 20 years, a combined total of 104 years in prison. The presiding judge didn't mince words. He condemned their actions as organized savagery, warning that their campaign could have sparked mass killings across Glasgow. In 2021, the appeals court dismissed every challenge. The sentences stood, but even as justice was served on paper, detectives and locals alike knew this wasn't the end of the story. Because in Glasgow's underworld, a conviction doesn't always equal closure. Sometimes it just resets the game. Victory in the courtroom didn't mean peace on the streets. While his attackers faced trial, Stephen Bonzo Daniel was still trying to rebuild a face and a life. He spent months in hospital, under constant police guard. His injuries were so severe he couldn't speak for weeks. When detectives finally tried to question him, he scribbled a note on a notepad, just 3 words: fuck off. He refused to cooperate, refused to identify anyone, refused to even admit there was a feud. At the trial, he told the court he was just a businessman, a man who'd left street life behind. But everyone in Glasgow knew that wasn't the whole truth, because in his world, talking meant dying, and silence, even in pain, even after almost losing his life, was survival. He lived, but the price was written across his face. Scars, metal plates, and the quiet realization that every empire eventually eats its own. That was the unspoken law of Glasgow's underworld. You never talk, you never break the code, you just keep breathing and hope that's enough. In 2020, the violence returned. Robert Daniel, Stephen's cousin, was ambushed with a machete, left bleeding on the pavement. 2 years later, Ryan Quinn was convicted for the attack. Another name added to a growing list of men trading freedom for vengeance. By 2022, things were personal again. A car was deliberately rammed into Stephen's partner's home in Bishopbriggs. Police issued fresh threat-to-life warnings, not just to gang members but to their families, neighbors, even bystanders. No one was truly safe anymore. Then came April 2025, the month Glasgow caught fire. A citywide arson campaign erupted. Homes, garages, and cars torched in the night. Stephen's own home on John Marshall Drive was hit. His uncle Norman's house went up in flames. So did a carpet shop, a Kirkintilloch garage, and several family-linked properties. More than 200 deliberate fires in 1 week, some carried out by teenagers barely 12 years old, paid pocket money by men twice their age to do their burning for them. Police called it a coordinated fire-raising campaign. Behind it, investigators said, was a new alliance. Dubai-based Ross McGill's Tamo Junto crew, working with Stephen Lyons to push Daniel's people out of the trade. But that alliance didn't last. By May 2025, Eddie Lyons Jr. and Ross Monaghan were both murdered in Spain, suspected Daniel retaliation. Then in September, Dubai police made sweeping arrests. Stephen Lyons, Ross McGill, Stephen Jameson, Stephen Larwood, Glasgow's most wanted, all taken down in one swoop. Reports say Stephen Daniel fled there too, chasing the only safety money could buy. Even from thousands of miles away, the fire still burns, and Glasgow still carries the scars. Stephen Bonzo Daniel survived the unthinkable. But survival isn't the same as living. He wears his past on his skin, the deep scars, the rebuilt face, the glass eye. He's alive, but every reflection is a reminder of what the streets took. His family is scattered, his city divided, and his name forever bound to a feud that refuses to die. For decades, the Daniels and the Lyons have fought for corners of Glasgow most people pass without a second thought. But beneath those streets, under the surface of normal life, The old grudges still whisper, every silence, every glance, every fire in the night. Because in this world, there are no clean exits, only survivors and ghosts. The code that kept him alive, that same code cost him everything else. If you found this story as shocking as we did, hit like. It helps others discover real, fact-based true crime documentaries like this one. And don't forget to subscribe. We're uncovering Britain's most dangerous criminal rivalries every week. Stories built on evidence, not rumors. This was the story of Stephen Bonzo Daniel, the man Glasgow couldn't kill.